Okay, what we're going to take a look at in this particular lesson is we're going to set up modals, because when we click this Edit Roles button, what we want to present to the user is a list of the current user's roles and the roles that are available, and give them a checkbox as well so that they can select the role that either they want the user to go into or a role that they want to remove for the user. Nothing too complex, but what we're going to use for this is modals. We've not looked at these yet. And if we go and take a look at NGX Bootstrap, then inside here we do have modals that we can use inside our project. Now we're going to need to import the modal module to make use of this. And then we've got various different options of how we can use modals, but effectively this is what it gives us. And this is just a very simple modal that we can't really do much with, and it's just created from a template using, and we've not really looked at this either, but ng template allows us to use a template reference variable, and then inside the component here we use the modal service that we get from NGX Bootstrap, and effectively in the click event we pass in the open modal and pass in the template and then use the service to show the modal, and that's what's happening here. But if we want to do more with our modals and we want to be able to get the data outside of a modal and do something with it, then we need to create a modal with a component. And what we do here is we need to pass this to the entry components of our Angular module, because modules can effectively take over and live anywhere in our application, and this entry components means that we don't need to specifically add the modal anywhere inside our templates, but we can access it via the service. And because it's listed as an entry component, then Angular will be able to display it. So we're going to make use of this, and what I'm going to do first of all is just copy the import that we need, and we'll head over to our shared service. So I'm just going to open up the shared module in this case, and we'll just go ahead and import modal module from Bootstrap modal, and then we need to add it to our list of imports. So I'll say modal module, and then we'll say for root, and then we need to remember to export this as well, so we'll say modal module. So what we'll do is we'll add a new folder inside our app for modals. So we'll say we'll create a new folder and we'll call it modals, and inside here we'll create a new component. So I'm just going to go back to the terminal and go to the third tab, and we'll cd upper level and cd into modals. And inside here what we're going to do is generate a new component for the modal. So we'll say ngg and then c, and we're going to say roles-modal, and we're going to skip -tests and press return. And then what we need to do with this roles modal is we need to add it to that entry components that we talked about earlier. So what we'll do is we'll go to our app module. So underneath Bootstrap, we'll just add the entry components, and what we see inside here is that this is now deprecated. And if we take a look at the description, then it says since 9.0 with Ivy, and this is Angular's engine that it uses to compile our application, this property is no longer necessary. So that means we don't need to add it, so we're not going to add it. Obviously, if you were using Angular 8, then you would need to add this. So what we can do is, since we don't need to do that, we'll go to our user management service. That's where we're going to open this up from, or user management component, I should say. And what we're going to need to bring into this is the modal service that we have. Now we've added that module, and we'll say private modal service, and we'll use bs modal service. And then what we can do is we can say open roles modal, and inside here we can say, and what we need to do inside here is we need to add a reference to a modal. So we'll say bs modal ref, and we'll call it bs modal ref. And then what we can do is say this.bs modal ref equals list.modal service dot show, and then we pass in our roles modal components, and then we can pass in some configuration if we have it. We don't have any at the moment. And let's go back to NGX Bootstrap so we can get an example of a modal. And if we take a look at the create modal with component, if we take a look inside the component, what we'll do is we'll just copy their example templates into our clipboard, and then we'll just paste this into our roles modal components template and just paste this inside here. So just a normal modal, what we've got going on here, using Bootstrap classes. But what we can do is we can pass properties into lists. And what we need to do to get access to the BS modal ref, we need to go to the role component or role modal component itself, and we'll say roles modal component, and we need to inject the BS modal ref into here. So what we'll do, we'll say public and check what this is called, and it's just BS modal ref, so we'll use that, and then we get this from BS modal ref. And if we take a look at the other properties that are listed inside here, just for this example, we'll just take a look and just make sure that we have this functionality working. So what we can specify inside the roles modal component is these different things. And these are just examples. So what we could do is say that inside this modal we'll have a title that's a string, we'll have a list that's of type any, and we'll also have the close button name, and this is going to be a string. So these properties, when we create the instance of this modal, we're going to pass these across with our modal reference. And this goes into our modal and will display these properties that we can provide. So if we go back to the example once again, then what we can do is we can give our modal some initial states, and let's just use their example just to save a bit of time, and we'll copy this into our open modal method. So we'll head back to our component, our user management component, and let's just paste in what we had, and instead of our method down here, what we'll use is we'll just swap the modal content with our roles modal components. Now inside here we're passing the modal some initial state, and we're passing that list and the title. And this is just an example of passing data another way via bsmodalref.content. We also can get access to the content inside there, as well as giving it some initial state. And if we go back and take a look at our roles modal components, then we've got those properties inside here, although the list should be an any array. And let's just initialize it so we don't get an error. So that's the modal in place. What we can then do is go to our user management template, and what we'll do inside here is we'll just add a click event to this, and we'll say click equals, and we're going to say open roles modal, and we won't add anything else in there. The modal is going to get its configuration properties from our user management component. We're passing it some initial states in this object. So it's going to have access to these properties. They still need to be defined in the roles modal themselves. We still need them here so that in our component we have access to them inside there. So what we should be able to see is this working inside our application. So let's take a look. If I click on edit roles, we can see that our modal displays inside our component. And we got the data that was passed through to this particular modal as well. And then we can click on close, and now we're set up, and what we want to do inside here is show the user's name, show them the roles along with a checkbox so that they can select a specific role, and when they submit, because we'll add buttons here, then they're going to call a method in our service to update the roles. That's the theory, and we'll take care of that next.